Since mortgages stabilising, we've seen the return of the London buyer.
Nice.
So although Crossrail's been active for a few years, I think COVID kind of downed that a little bit with people staying at home, working from home maybe 3-4 days a week. Whereas now with offices pulling you back into London, Crossrail's getting used more. So most of my buyers now, I'd probably say 50% are from outside of Maidenhead.
Might cost you an extra £40 a month to have a policy in place. I know that the margins are already tight and your mortgage payment's gone up, but could you potentially survive without 12 months worth of rent being paid to you whilst you're going through the court process and paying legal expenses to get to that stage at court on where you get possession of the property back? Plus, if the tenants don't move out at the end of the possession order and you need to instruct bailiffs, have you got the cost to do that, and can you wait for a further term to do it? Stu, thanks for joining us today. Pleasure having you on. For those listening, Stuart is the avocado partner who operates in Maidenhead. How long have you been doing that now for?
2.5 years.
2.5 years in Maidenhead, but in a estate agency.
Nearly 15 years.
Oh,
doesn't look old enough, does it?
Well, I've done a beard dye. I've got rid of grey hairs down the bottom for today.
Nice. So Stu, talk to us about Maidenhead then. What's happening in the market? Seen a lot of good stuff on data for Maidenhead in regards to average rents, average house prices. All looks good, but from your perspective, how's it going?
I think in the last 12 months since mortgages stabilising, we've seen the return of the London buyer.
Nice.
So although Crossrail's been active for a few years, I think COVID kind of downed that a little bit with people staying at home, working from home maybe 3-4 days a week. Whereas now with offices pulling you back into London, Crossrail's getting used more. So most of my buyers now, I'd probably say 50% are from outside of Maidenhead.
Right.
Whereas the last 2 years before that, I'd say probably just Maidenhead people or Berkshire people, locals. Yeah. So we've got more buyers again, which means prices are coming back up to where they were maybe just before the interest rates started lifting.
Yeah, great. And what about house prices? Are they sort of steady? Have they increased slightly over the last 12 months? How's that sort of market?
So I'd say 12 months ago, they probably dropped 2 to 5%, but I'd say we've probably come back 2.5%.
Okay.
So we're there or thereabouts where it was. And
Nice.
I think there's some data come out this week. I think Halifax are saying it's pretty much back at the peak. And I would say Maidenhead, it is back at the peak.
Yeah, I think with Maidenhead property, especially from an investor's point of view, and we've dealt with some investors in Maidenhead, you can get some good investment properties in Maidenhead, can't you, where the yields are good. I saw a 2-bedroom property yesterday that was in Maidenhead, looked at the sale price, and they bought it, I think it was about 18 months ago, I think it was, for around $250. Looked at what the rental price had been online, and it's around $1,650, $1,700 that they were getting. It's a 2-bedroom apartment. So I mean, something like that, it's like an investor's paradise, right? It's just you get big returns on it.
I think since Crossrail coming out, Maidenhead used to hover its yield around 3.4%, and we would say that was a good yield. Maidenhead used to be a capital return town. So you buy something cheap, you wait 5 years, you've got your money. Whereas now the rental yield's probably at 5%, because everywhere else around it's gone up as well.
Yeah.
And I think with the lack of landlords buying, it just makes the tenants pay more and more money.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But so lots being built in the town centre for those who aren't local.
A lot.
Is it the Three Sisters? Is that what they're calling those towers? That's what I saw on Facebook.
Well,
you've got some big residential towers that have gone up.
Yeah, controversial towers.
Yeah. And I think a couple more bits to go.
So those 3 are going to turn into 5 potentially. So typical builder, he's got the original 3 towers up. He's got a bit of land left, and now he wants the next 2.
Yep.
So the next 2 will probably be the profit towers. It's controversial. The Maidenhead groups hate flats. They call it concrete jungle. But from a shopping point of view, you've got to pull people back into the town centre for the shops to want to return.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we get a bit confused with, shopping habits have changed. Amazon is quicker. We ordered something on Amazon on Sunday morning. It was there Sunday evening. I didn't have to leave the front door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if I'd have wanted it from the town, At the moment, there's no town centre car parking because it's been demolished.
Mm.
So I couldn't even have parked to go and get it if I'd have wanted to.
Yeah.
So like Maidenhead needs 2 to 5 years to fix the town centre.
It's almost like a Bracknell, but just behind,
5 years ago.
5 to 10 years behind that curve. And even in Bracknell, they're desperately trying to infill with blocks of apartments to fund the nighttime economy, the evening economy of the casual restaurants, the
Nando's is
Wagamamas
on
and
its way.
Nando's types of buildings where you need people who just make a snap decision to go and spend 60 quid rather than get in the car and plan that kind of thing. So adding 1,000 flats into the town centre is what funds those types of restaurants to stay alive on a Tuesday night rather than just the Fridays and Saturdays where people will do cinema and blah, 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 blah.
So Maidenhead is a town that's kind of half done. So the waterside is all done near Waitrose and Copper Club. And that bit looks really lovely. But then the main high street, the Nicholson Centre, the main car park, that's yet to be done next to your Three Sisters.
The Five Sisters.
The
five-a-side scheme.
It'll
It'll
be
be
the
a
Five
new,
Sisters.
they'll have to rebrand it.
With a train station that needs to sort its parking out. But apart from that, it's...
Do they have plans to do that though? Plans in the works for doing that, or is it?
So they're just going to resubmit the plans.
Okay.
Because
For a little bit more.
things have changed. Well, now it's going to be Five Sisters. So the Nicholsons have probably gone, well, do you know what? Can we get a bit more resi in there?
Yeah.
And like the Facebook groups are like, they don't want any more flats. Well, people need to stop buying them and they'll stop building them. That is the answer to it.
Yeah.
And all of our parking is kind of a 10-15 minute walk away, which is what people are upset about.
Yeah.
But the Maidenhead Golf Course is about to go. The borough's given the money over for that. The borough's still paying interest on that loan, even though they've given it.
Interesting.
It's a bit of a weird. It's a bit of a weird one, but that was agreed years ago. So that'll be 2,000 new homes on the golf course.
Right.
So you also need the town centre to support that. I've always been excited about it, but I think it'll be at least 5 years till we see it.
Yeah, it needs to flush through. For anyone who watches our Facebook, I do something called Buy to Let of the Week, which is not every week, but it's got a tagline now, so we have to stick to it. Every so often, I pop into Maidenhead because I can find a modern flat for $250.
Yep.
Which, being from a few more junctions down the M4, it blows my mind the value of being able to buy what I define as a reasonably good builder, a Michael Shanley type, because obviously the whole of Maidenhead's built by Michael Shanley.
8%.
For 250,000 when people are spending 354 on a brand new flat, 5 minutes walk up the road, which it confuses me to why those things aren't getting snapped up faster or prices aren't higher.
Ground rent.
Okay.
So Maidenhead has been divided into different kind of like eras of ground rent.
Mm-hmm.
So anything 2017 and before, sort of like newish style, it's probably got a ground rent of £500 an annum.
Yeah.
It's probably got a doubling schedule. So every 10 or 15 years it will double. So that's not really mortgageable
So your
today.
mortgage company doesn't like it.
So it's cash buyers only. So they are cheap because if you're cash, you want your bang for your buck.
Yep.
Anything 2017 onwards has probably got an RPI linked one. So it's probably worth a little bit more. And anything 2022 and onwards doesn't have any ground rent. So the new ones are effectively... So take a Michael Shanley's build at Bolter's Meadow. They probably paid 360 to 380 for it. They're now worth 280. Plus it's 20 grand to get a brand new ground rent and lease on it.
So your buyout is £20,000.
Just to leave the development.
Yeah.
If you want to market it to all mortgage lenders.
Yeah. So that's the key. And then do you think that is a little golden nugget to investors or a leave alone? In that those flats in theory are worth a lot more, but you have to have the cash to put into it to then maybe refinance it later on down the line.
Or you negotiate on the purchase that the seller renews.
Exactly. This is what I'm getting at.
So if you're a landlord...
If you've got the clout, if you've got the money in your pocket to do it...
And you've got that knowledge...
Yeah.
100%. If you buy it by accident... So I accidentally bought a This was a long time ago.
This is a good. I've never heard that phrase. I accidentally buy something by accident.
So
Tell me more.
So I was nearly, I must have been 20, and I bought a flat at Fleetham Gardens in Lower Early.
Yep.
And 18 years ago, they didn't make a fuss about leases. So I bought a 67-year lease. Knew nothing about it. NatWest weren't bothered at the time. Their criteria was as long as there was 30 years left when my mortgage expired, they didn't care. Whereas today, you couldn't buy that mortgage in NatWest. NatWest would just say no. So I accidentally bought that, had to do a lease renewal. That's how I learned about leases, through a very bad mistake.
Yeah.
Today,
You learn harder with your own money than you do with someone else's, for sure.
Yeah.
It's a bigger lesson, yeah.
Whereas today, if a solicitor saw that on day one of a transaction, he'd be like, don't buy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just walk away from it. But I think if you've got a bit of patience with the lease renewal system, because it's slow, you can pick up a good buy.
Mm. That's what we were talking about in one of our previous episodes, Mike, when we had the 7 property debates, and one of the debates was whether you buy flats or houses. And I think from the investors that I speak to today, the majority of them want those 2-bed terraced houses, those 3-bed terraced houses, because it's more of a family home. There's probably more demand for it further on down the line, and you get your higher renter yields on it. But with apartments out there, there's probably so many that are on the market at the moment that you can definitely get a good buy, a good deal on a flat. And it just, like you said, it comes down to your preference, isn't it? If you can deal with the leaseholds and all of that sort of stuff, it's no problem at all. You know, you can get a good buy from it, but you need the knowledge there, right? Because like you said, you made a mistake,
A whoopsie.
a whoopsie, and I'm sure there's other people out there that make them as well, or not guided in the right way to make sure it benefits them. So yeah, I mean, me and Mike have seen recently on markets where you get some bargain apartments, good yields on it, good rentals on it. We know that if it went on the market tomorrow, it'll be rented out within 24 hours. But then you look at some of them and you think, right, service charges, ground rents, all of that, it's like, actually, there is no money at the end of this after everything that I've got to pay out. So you've just got to make sure that you've got the knowledge there.
And it's timing as well. Like, if you'd have bought the day before Brexit, you'd paid premium price for that 2013 to 2016. If you'd have bought first 2 months of COVID, you would have got it at the cheapest possible rate because everyone was panicking. And if you'd have bought it a month before the interest rates started jumping up, that was peak time again. Like, if you're buying something that's leasehold, you've got to think, if I do a lease renewal now and get rid of the ground rent, am I going to save 10 grand by doing it today? Whereas in 10 years' time, it's going to cost you 20 grand to do that same thing. So, like, it's just timing and money options.
Yeah.
Like, for me, if I could only buy a 2-bed, I'd probably buy a masonette. So the service charge might not be there. The ground rent might only be £200. So I don't need to worry about renewing it. But then again, you've got to then weigh up the costs of, do I need to look after the roof? Whereas the service charge will look after the roof. Depends how active you want to be as a landlord or lady as well. Like, that management company should actually, if it's a good one, look after everything outside of your front door.
Yeah,
If
90% of them don't.
No.
And those were the keys to the argument. I said, look, I've owned a few flats as a landlord, as I know you do and have, Stuart, and they've seen me really well. I could have probably made a bit more capital appreciation if back in the day I would have bought houses, but back when I bought them, I probably didn't have the money to buy the houses either. So
yeah, and like a couple of my flats at one point, the mortgages were probably higher than the value of the flat. But you've got to think like long term property. If it's a 2-year investment, you've really got to buy it at the lowest price that's ever available.
Yeah.
If it's a 5-year investment and you're waiting for a town centre to develop, you've actually got to make sure that town centre is developed in 5 years. Otherwise, it's a 10-year investment, and it's just right timing.
Yeah, and we saw the same kind of push on house prices in Bracknell. As soon as the steel work went in for the town centre, anything within a 15-minute, 20-minute walk of the town went absolutely bananas, because of the hope and the vision that things were going to be better in the town, having it been just a concrete wasteland for
with Mackie D's.
years, and a McDonald's.
That's all it had, McDonald's.
McDonald's and a haven for skaters, I think was all it was. But it changed the town entirely, which you've got the same promise within Maidenhead, but the difference is you've got a decent train link, which Bracknell's never had, never will have. The difference is about 40 minutes into London, something like that, from a 5-10 mile radius, which is wild. What are your top three in Maidenhead? If you had which I'm sure you do, an investment buyer on your books with cash burning the hole in the pocket, where would you point them?
So for me, Maidenhead's more than just rental. You've got 2 top academies in the UK in Maidenhead, which is quite rare. You've got great private schools. So like the schooling for Maidenhead is a massive pull. You've got 2 national trust parks. You've got Northtown Moor. You've got the Thicket. You've got Ockwells Park as well. So like for me, if I was an investor, I would probably try and get something in the Oldfield School catchment. That is town centre to a degree. Like it's a 15-minute walk to the train station if you're in the right part of it. You're in a top 10 academy. The value there tends to go up, not down. Or if Maidenhead's coming down as a price, that's the last affected sort of area that comes down because it's on the borders with Bray. So that would be my number 1 spot. Number 2 would be the Lowbrook Academy catchment because it's in Cots Green. It's got good M4, M40 network. And then possibly the Riverside. The Riverside, you might be able to steal a house at a low value, but it might be it's a private road rather than an RBWM adopted road, and it'll probably have warm air heating and need a bit of work. But there's so many different bits to Maidenhead that are good to invest in.
And that's the key, I think, is local knowledge on that side of things, rather than just going Maidenhead, stick a pin in the map. Well,
the Rightmove map for Maidenhead is not accurate. So Maidenhead for schools is a road specific, even to the point where you can have Highfield Lane
on the left and on the right.
No,
yeah.
On the left, it's in Lowbrook Academy catchment. On the right, you're not in that top 2 academy in the UK. You're in Wessex Way, which is in the top 2,000 schools in the UK. But Rightmove says as long as you're within a quarter of a mile, that's not how it works. And people have bought properties based on Rightmove's radius map. That might work in Bracknell and Reading, but it just doesn't work in Maidenhead.
Do those catchments move?
No.
Not on an annual basis. That's where people can get caught out, as you buy on the last street in the catchment, and then the next year you see the catchment shrink.
So the catchment hasn't changed for some schools for a long time on the RBWM map. The only reason it changes is if there's a low birth year.
Yeah.
So instead of 30 kids, there's 20. So then they tend to pull the closest or the sibling in.
Yeah.
But I mean,
it's not going to be by much, though, is it? It's going to be.
No, it's luck.
Well, I think we're going into much lower birth rate years compared to the last sort of 4 or 5 where it peaked.
COVID birth, you mean?
It's anyone from sort of reception now is about the lowest birth year. So yeah, it would be sort of the year before COVID. Before that, they had exceptionally high going in, and it's dropped right off, which means that in my council, they're now writing to parents saying we're going to be shutting primary schools because they don't have any kind. What the forecast they have is saying they're nowhere near the right levels, but it does mean that if you are in a catchment, you've got much more safety that you're actually going to get in, as well as being in the catchment rather than being the 201st kid through the door, which is a real problem. And like you say, people, particularly in the home counties, will move across the road just to be in the right school catchment. I've seen some dirty tricks happening as well over time.
6-month rentals to get in, go live with your grandmother. It is a thing. So yeah, it does happen.
We had to provide proof that we'd disposed of our old property in order to complete our school application last year,
because someone's cheated the system for you.
Yeah, because it was a high waiting list school. We had to show proof, not just that we'd bought our new house, but we'd actually got rid of our old one. that we weren't just messing about with the system and renting a flat above a shop.
The dirty
and
tricks of
leaving it
admissions.
empty. Yeah. Maybe that's another podcast, Dave.
Dirty tricks. It's a different type of podcast.
Yeah, it is. So Stu, tell me, obviously you're a landlord yourself, small portfolio,
Yep, accidental.
accidental
with.
landlord.
He keeps
to
accidentally buying houses.
Yeah. Accidental landlord to begin with. So I bought my first one and I was in the fortunate position that I could keep it for my second one. It was never the plan to buy it and rent it. Every time I thought about selling it, for some reason I just can't let it go.
And he won't let you.
Yeah.
Keeps
Yeah.
refusing
Now I
to give
can't
us
let it
section
go.
Get a
21.
higher rep for you, don't worry.
Well, to be fair, you have just got well, the thing is £1,000 for a one-bed flat is unheard of.
Yeah.
But now it's
Was
kind of
unheard
become
of.
the
Now
norm
it's-
now.
Yeah. I'm sure those flats have been £700 a month not too long ago.
Well, they were 7% yields when I bought one. But that was when the purchase price was 119,000.
Yeah.
So that's how long ago that is.
Yeah.
But yeah, amazing now.
Yeah, I think, and I speak to accidental landlords that, never wanted to become a landlord, but they've kept being a landlord because, they find it quite easy process, especially when you've got a managing agent in place as well. There's not much to worry about. But have you got any plans to add further ones into your portfolio, Stu?
I'm just weighing up two different risks.
Right.
Risk number one. So I watched the podcast about the investments and where you'd put 50 grand in each.
Yeah.
So risk number one is both my buy-to-lets have only got a 25% deposit in them. So if I was to play it safe, I would edge that up to a 50% deposit and get the best remortgage rate that's available. That's like the soft option. There's little reward for that. I might say 50 quid a month when I remortgage it. Option number two is, do I now buy a third one? Rather than it being leasehold, do I buy freehold? But then I need a bigger deposit. Hopefully I'm a little bit more educated today than when I was buying those properties accidentally, like 15, 20 years ago. So for me, I would probably want to go one or two options. I've spoken to Mike about one option, low lease properties. So cash outright buy. Hedge your bets on the government changing things for leasehold renewal in the future. Obviously, the last government, they watered it down. It didn't quite go where it needed to. But if you're a landlord now that buys a property with a low lease and you get on the winning side,
Yeah.
you could probably save 50 grand
Yeah.
or make 50 grand. So that's the risky part. So rather than doing crypto, I would do that. Or, just find a property that needs a bit of love. A bit of LED spotlights, new carpet, new front door.
Yeah.
Bish bash boss, get it on the market. That's the two options.
See, I'd still go crypto.
The thing is,
No, ignore when I say crypto. It's too high risk. It's too
It's
high
like it's
risk.
becoming a running joke. Isn't it?
someone said to me, crypto's great for moving money. And I was just like, I can move money from NatWest to Halifax. Like, to me, it doesn't mean anything. They were like, but can you do it right now? And I was like, well, no, I'll just go into my bank on Monday and do it. I just then...
Yeah, no, property. I think property is just the safe option, isn't it? Especially when you're going to rent it out as well and add it to your buy-to-lets that you've already got. You're always going to have tenants that need to live in a property. You're always going to have professional people looking, families looking. It's probably only going to get a little bit worse. The demand for it is better. The demand for rental properties, as we've seen a lot of people exit the market recently because of what the government are doing. Some landlords have exited because of the autumn budget coming. Why they've done that, I don't know, because they don't even know what is being said yet. But they're scared. They're getting scared. They think they're losing control. So obviously that's had an effect on the supply. So yeah, I mean, if you could add buy-to-lets and you can run with it, then there's always going to be demand there for it.
Yeah, I mean, the two main things I think of now going forwards as a landlord, one, I want to make sure I've got insurance.
Yeah.
Like on both of my new renewals, I've made sure, if the tenant's not going to pay, like I've had a few landlord friends that they've been shafted by tenants. They've been told by the council, don't pay the rent, stay there. wait until you get evicted will then get you a property.
Yeah.
So I want the rent to protect that. Secondly, then I met a landlord and he's like, I'm not going to sell my stock. And I said, okay, why are you not going to sell your stock? You're running against the odds. He's like, why would I pay capital gains tax and then I'm going to die anyway and pay inheritance tax? Might as well just die and pay inheritance tax and then pass the money over that way. So he's avoiding one tax.
Yeah.
I just thought that's an interesting way to look at it. But if you've bought that for the long term and you don't need the money and your kids can have it that way in the future, why not?
So you've taken out landlord insurance on your latest tenancies for rent and legal cover, which has been a traditional upsell for letting agents for the last 20 years or so. What actually made you take the bait this time?
I just think I knew the tenant could have it their way to a degree. If they're going to get backed by the government more to be safer, which I'm all for, by the way. I didn't mind the EPC rules, it changing to a C. I know that got scrapped. But like for me, I would always want my property to be in the best condition so that I attracted the best tenant. That hopefully then I wouldn't need the insurance. But I've just had a bad experience with 2 tenants. They've lovely individual people. But under the same roof, they're not so lovely with each other. So they've left.
Well put, wasn't it? Yeah.
Very like PC.
Yeah.
But that happens. Like I go and see people that they loved each other from school, but then they're divorcing. It gets messy with kids. Those couples and families are tenants as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But then I was thinking the other side of it. Well, for £40 or £50 a month, peace of mind.
Yeah.
And I'm showing my age now. So last time I took a car out, I got the extra policy to protect the tyres. So if the tyres went, don't worry, same day someone comes out and sees you.
God, I wish I'd got that.
A week before I got married, tyre blew out on the car.
Yeah.
They were out the same day to fix it, bish bash bosh, done.
Yeah.
That peace of mind for something like that, yes, it was a policy. Yes, I paid in excess. But actually, with an investment of something that's maybe 200 grand, why would you let someone stay there and not insure them?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the conversation I always have with clients is about, okay, it might cost you an extra £40 a month to have a policy in place. I know that the margins are already tight and your mortgage payment's gone up, but could you potentially survive without 12 months worth of rent being paid to you whilst you're going through the court process and paying legal expenses to get to that stage at court on where you get possession of the property back? Plus, if the tenants don't move out at the end of the possession order and you need to instruct bailiffs, have you got the cost to do that? And can you wait for a further term to do it?
6 weeks, yeah.
Or, for the sake of £40 a month, do you want to guarantee your rent and your legal expenses? Some say, yeah, right, fair point, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Some say, no, I can't afford the extra £40 a month.
Whereas if, as a landlord, I'd be saying to the potential letting agent, do you offer this policy? If they said no, I'd be like, well, I won't be using it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that should be the first priority, in my opinion. Like, why would you buy a property and use a cheap solicitor? Why would you buy a property and have a high interest rate when there's a lower rate out there from a broker who can source it for you?
Yeah.
Why would you not insure your property?
Exactly. It's just a bit of, basics to do, really.
I think it's one of those, isn't it? You're spending, hoping that you never actually have to reap benefit. It's like in reverse, isn't it? Like you're spending money while you don't need it, and then you get it for free when you do.
Yeah.
Insurance is a weird, reversed kind of world like that, where I've got to insure my house because if it burns down, I can't afford to rebuild it. But do you weigh up I'm playing devil's advocate here, I don't know if you can tell. Do you weigh up the risk that it's never going to happen to you? Because, the house is in a nice area and the tenants are nice tenants and blah, blah, blah. And just take the gamble that they don't split up and the walls close in around the one who's left there who can't afford to pay it.
It's a big
they're
old
left
gamble,
there with the kids and this, that and the other. Because that's how
gamble.
these issues like you say, come into force, isn't it? Where there was 2 incomes and suddenly one of them disappears and leaves the other one with a part-time income and 2 kids or something.
Yeah.
And they physically cannot afford to pay it. And like you say, their first advice from the council is sit tight.
Yeah.
It's just a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, you just need to add it on. I think, you know, from what I've seen recently, that, you know, people have been together for 20 years and rented for the past 5 years. Now they've split up. The father's gone. Mother's left on her own for 2 kids. Then she's got to apply to the council to get some sort of benefits to help her live at that property. Council turning around to her saying, stay where you are. Rental payments haven't come in. I mean, luckily we managed to, we work with the tenants rather than against tenants and help them through situations like that. But it just shows that you could be the perfect model tenant to move into a property
on day one.
On the day.
On
yeah,
day
exactly.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're only perfect in referencing on that day. Aren't
Yeah,
you?
and I just think something like that you can't guarantee how something is going to pan out in a 2-3 year tenancy. Then why wouldn't you have that insurance? Because you cannot guarantee how that tenant is going to be. So if I haven't got that guarantee there, well, I'm going to get that guarantee that I'm going to get my rent payments and legal expenses covered just in case something does happen.
And like, you could have your best friend in there.
Yeah.
Best friends fall out with each other.
Yeah.
Cut the bank, money gone. Like,
Yeah.
The thing is, I understand if a tenant lost their job, if the local borough tells you to sit there and not pay it, as a landlord, I get that. But then that's my fault if I haven't insured against that.
Yeah.
That's no one else's fault. That's not the borough's fault.
No.
Like, 'cause I already know that's the system. Like, I can't blame the system later.
I think that's it's a good way of looking at it. You can blame the system, but you can't bloody change it. So
No, and the system's been there for 10 years like that.
yeah,
Like, minimum. So.
yeah, we've all known that's what the council say since whenever.
Since they stopped building council houses.
Yeah, exactly.
Literally.
Yeah, since they started selling them, I imagine,
Yeah.
like back in the 90s. So it's probably time just to suck it up and just say, well, if that's what the game is, then
Let's jump on board with it.
yeah.
The insurance provider.
Yeah.
Go, why did we put that policy out there?
Yeah.
Exactly. No, it's definitely a top tip for landlords out there. So Stu, I want to pick your brains on something.
Okay.
I've got
Sounds really
I've
bad.
got I've got 100k
Oh,
right that I want to. I might have it in real life. Well, this
Okay.
might be-
You might have it in crypto.
I might have it in crypto. You know.
it's not developed yet. But
Yeah.
it
Yeah, it will
there
be.
in 10
Yeah.
years'
No,
time.
I'm 10xing my money on crypto. Don't worry about that.
Okay, so you got 100 grand.
100 grand. I'm going into Maidenhead.
Ooh.
What am I? Where am I putting my money? What am I
You're not gonna
buying?
get much for 100 grand. So,
Am I going apartment? Am I going house? Small deposit, big deposit on something? How can I make it work from an investor's point of view?
this, you might not have heard this one before. So if I had 100 grand today, I would probably buy a retirement
Right.
property in Maidenhead under a business.
Yeah.
One of my current landlords, or our current landlords, is doing this at the moment. She is buying a retirement property because with 100 grand, you can probably get a 10 to a 12% return.
Mm.
And if you're buying it as a business, you bypass the age restriction, so we don't have to be 65 plus. There's always going to be a market, I think, at that age group for rental. Whether the children pay the rent, whether the adult pays the rent.
It's quite often paid up front from sales proceeds, isn't it?
Yeah, and typically speaking, you will be, I would imagine, someone 65 plus to hit in, and then you stay there until either one or two things happens. You go to a care home because you need further care, or you go to the hospital. So it's a long-term let. You would hope they wouldn't have too many arguments with people.
No.
It should be quite secure lending or funding, I should say. But that's one option. Option number 2, buy a low lease property. But that's high risk. That's high risk. So for 100 grand, you might be able to get maybe a lease with 60 or 70 years left on it. 2 bed,
Okay.
1 bath, maybe some outdoor space. But to rent that, you'd probably get £1,400 to £1,500 a month.
Yeah, so it's big return.
15% yield.
Yes.
Like, even if you never wanted to renew the lease, 15% for 60 years.
Well, I think that's a good point, isn't it? I once met an investor who bought a big building in the middle of Reading with an 8-year lease because the rent was phenomenal.
But for 8
He
years...
was like, well, I'll cash out after 4 years and then it's 4 years profit. Like, why is this not a good decision? I was like, I don't know.
Well, the thing is, you're never taught about leases or anything like that at school.
No, of course you're not.
So you then, like, you sit there and you look at the maths and you're like, it can't be that good.
Yeah. It's just because you can't get mortgage lending on it, right? Like,
Yeah,
so you're limited.
It's high risky.
Yeah.
But actually, if you're going to walk away with, I don't know, what's 15 grand a year times 30, so that's 450,000, and you've put in 100, that's better than crypto.
Happy day.
That's better than crypto.
Better than crypto.
And,
Maybe not.
And as like you say, if the government ever get round to changing the lease rules, then you've got your
450 becomes
lottery
600.
win, haven't you? That you can just renew the lease at a reasonable sum rather than getting stung for 50 grand or whatever it is to do the lease back up to the full term. So I think that will happen at some point, because I feel like at the top of the tree of most hated people by governments is freeholders, above landlords, above homeowners, which is obviously above tenants.
And you've got to chuck absent freeholders in there somewhere. They're the real
but you
stitches.
didn't find them.
Yeah, but then, like, I've got one at the moment. Lovely landlady. We can't sell it to a mortgage because the leasehold is only good. It's not absolute. So it's a different level of leasehold. The freeholder's disappeared / doesn't want to touch it, or one of the two. We can't figure out which one. So then we're going to have to go and claim share of freehold. That's going to take 2 years. She wants to sell it last year, not in 2 years' time.
God.
You know, and I've said to her, I was like, if you want to sell it, it's going to be at a discounted rate because it's a cash buyer.
Yeah, someone has to take the risk.
Yeah, the risk of
and
the future.
time and the effort.
But for someone, there's a good deal there. There's not a good deal there for her selling it. There's probably a good deal for someone there buying it. And it's just weighing up your options at the right time.
Yeah. No, it's always like, yeah, does it normally take 2 years to apply for share of freehold? Or up to 2 years?
Up to.
Wow.
You know, because people don't have to respond.
If you don't have a willing seller, that's the problem, isn't it? If you've got a willing seller who wants to dispose of something, you can get 2 solicitors together and do it in a couple of months.
You've got to be able to prove everything. Now, I can't prove anything from 17 years ago because I've chucked that paperwork. But if I said to Land Registry, can you tell me Stuart Bock owns this? Yeah, they can. So actually I can bypass some things. If that original person's dead or the document's missing, how do you prove it? So then you've got to write to people, you've got to prove that you've written to people. It's tough.
Yeah, that is tough. But like you said, potentially a good deal there for a
buy for someone if they want to take that toughness on.
Yeah.
And if they've got the knowledge of how to fix those things and they've got a good solicitor in that area, perfect.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to pay a solicitor 600 quid to do it.
No.
Give you £6,000, you know?
No.
Yeah.
So, Stu, thanks for joining us today. We'll wrap it up there. But listeners, if you're thinking about investing in Maidenhead or you want to know more about Maidenhead, then obviously give Stu a call. His contact details will be in the show notes. Happy to give you advice, talk to you about anything Maidenhead investing.
Not Slough.
Not Slough, Maidenhead. But yeah, give him a call. He'll be happy to help. But Stu, thank you for joining us today. Mike, thank you. And join us for another episode in the Investors Corner next week.